So I like when you do this, man. You have a guest in here, and I remember Ty was in here before, and he was the trout guy. So
Well, he
Ty
was
Walker,
smoking chimneys.
smoking chimneys. Sorry,
Smoke in chimneys.
but we also have a new in studio guest today.
Yeah, so Zach Shaffer, a local businessman that we wanted to bring in, and just, I've been hearing your name a couple times for different friends, and
from listening to me on the radio. 'Cause I
yeah,
talk a lot
you've
about
known Zach a while, and so it's kind of neat to hear people's story and just hear where you started and where you started and where you are today and where you want to go, right? That's kind of what everybody wants to know. Like, because I don't know how many people. I just had a guy that I was talking to last time, my kid's soccer game, and he's about to retire from a federal job after, I want to say it's 30 years.
That's full retirement.
He looks pretty good for 30 years. That's the only compliment you're going to get, Chris, by the way. Okay. So he said,
You're assuming he listens to your show.
he says he's heard me. So I don't know if he listens every week, but he's heard it. So look, 30 years you doing something. He goes, I don't want to go work for anybody else. I want to kind of do my own thing, but I don't know what that is. They need the confidence, right? They need the, I don't have masters in business administration. I didn't go to school for 18 years. No, they want to hear that just the average guy or gal got out there, rolled up their sleeves, educated themselves, but not a formal education, right? They don't have the tech degree or, Liberty University, MBA. They just got out and did it. And I think that's what I want to hear about your story. Tell me what you do and what kind of business you run and how you got started. I guess it's just kind of tell me your beginning.
Yeah, so I would love to do that. So my name is Zach Shaffer, and I'm the owner of TBL Investment Group.
What is that, TBL?
TBL Investment Group.
Okay.
Yes. So to give you a little bit of backstory on that, I joined the military when I was 19, 20, and ended up getting deployed to Afghanistan in 2012. I joined or enlisted as military police. So because I wasn't old enough to be in law enforcement at the time, I was under 21. So I was like, well, I'll join the Army Reserves and get into law enforcement that way. So deployed to Afghanistan in 2012, then returned, worked some like odd jobs, construction and whatnot, and finally applied to a local law enforcement agency here in the Roanoke Valley and got hired on in 2014. So, and at the time I had, like, my passion was for law enforcement, or, well, it still is. But I kind of felt like, I really wanted to be a business owner. I just didn't know what. I couldn't figure it out. And I had even tossed around like doing a lawn care company and window cleaning company at one point.
Noble professions. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just trying to think of something.
Right.
But I knew that I was passionate about law enforcement. So I kind of set my sights on eventually maybe either going with the state police or federal. Couldn't make my mind up. And at that time, I had only taken like a few college courses. I think I don't really remember how many credits, but I went to Virginia Western for some time, actually prior to getting hired at a local sheriff's office. And then, yeah, so after 2014, I stayed at the sheriff's office for a while, worked in the jail initially, and then got promoted into patrol. And then my unit commander called me up and said, hey, we have another deployment going up. Are you interested, or coming up? Are you interested in going? And at the time I was like, no. I just started, I just started on patrol, and I would prefer not to go. And he said, well, he said, I would like you to consider this because it is a very, very rare opportunity, the type of deployment that you would be able to go on.
We're going to send you to Cancun, Mexico.
Right.
You wish.
So I was like, okay, well, I mean, I remember exactly where I was when he told me, and I was sitting in my patrol car, and of course I love my job. At this point, I'm
Yeah.
2 years in.
Right.
I had started in the jail, so I was really on the road. I mean, plus I went through the police academy. That was
Not very
months.
long.
I was
Yeah.
fresh,
Right.
and I'm loving it. And he, I'm like, golly, I don't want to deploy again. I just got back from Afghanistan and 3 years ago, roughly. So I was like, all right, well, what is it? What is it that you guys are wanting to send me on here? He said, well, you'll be a part of a specialty team, a 5-man team, which we're assembling, and you would be going on a PSD mission, PSD mission. And I'm like, well, what is that? He's like, it's Protective Service Division of the Army with CID. So I didn't really know much about it, started researching it, and essentially it is the Secret Service for the United States Army.
Oh, okay.
And they protect officers of high rank, such as really colonels and above, but primarily 2-star, 3-star, and so forth, as well as the SecDef, the Secretary of Defense, which you would think, wouldn't that be Secret Service at that level? It's still CID that does that. So I was like, all right, well, that's interesting. And at the time, I think I was an E4. I hadn't promoted to sergeant. And I was like, Talked to my wife about it. Of course, I didn't have kids at the time, but she was like, no. So I wrote a letter to them saying, I thought about it. I was like, man, I want to go. I want to go so bad. But
you haven't told us where yet.
Right. And
you're getting to that, right?
I will, yeah. Because they wouldn't tell me either.
Oh, okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, I really want to go, but it's just not good for my career. So I put a letter in. It was like, I don't know that this would be good for me at the moment in my career and so forth. And the commander was like, well, I'll think about it. And a week later, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry you're going. And I was like, okay. There's no way out of it. So at this point, I just have to
suck it up.
suck it up. And what is it? Like, let's go. Like, what do I need to do next? So I went in and they spoke with me and they told me where it was. And it was a mission to the Horn of Africa. So we'd be protecting generals within the Horn of Africa. And those countries included Djibouti, Uganda, Ethiopia, all those countries around that area, to include Somalia. So
home of the pirates.
Yes, and you guys know about that. You ever seen the movie Black Hawk Down?
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah.
That of course that happened there in Mogadishu in Somalia. So I was like, all right, well, this should be interesting. So they sent me to a specialized school out in Missouri. And it was honestly the coolest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was, I think, 3 weeks of range time, clearing structures, all of the Protective Service Division training, like with vehicles around this racetrack, and we would ram other cars, pit other cars. Weren't wearing seatbelts at all. Weren't allowed to wear seatbelts, so they would.
That sounds like some fun, doesn't it?
Yeah,
you're getting paid to do this.
Yeah, and it was great. So went on the deployment. Lived in a. Yeah, this all kind of ties in. So I'll just kind of continue at this pace with the story. So I lived in a shipping container there on base, and I paid for internet, satellite internet. I think it was like $200 a month. And I was making some extra money at that point, being away. Not, of course, my wife was back home, but I was able to start saving some money. And because I'm making a lot more at this point than I was with the sheriff's office. So I was like, all right, well, do I just save it and be responsible or not? And I had a friend back home, and she was in trucking, and really great friend. And she was like, well, would you be interested in starting a trucking company? And I said, well.
Like tractor trailer.
Yes.
Like hauling shipment. Or
hauling for others.
Yeah.
Yes. And
yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm in Africa, and I don't come back for another, 9 months or whatever, however long. And she's like, okay. She's like, well, I can buy the trucks and I can hire the drivers, and if you start the company and help manage it on the management side, I can do the part that I know how to do. And when you get back, you can pick up wherever it is at that point. So I was like, how in the world am I going to do this? I have satellite internet, and I'm 8 hours ahead, which was actually convenient because I would come off of a mission if it was like during the day, and then I could start like working. I was, it was morning time back in the States or on the East Coast, at least, which actually helped out.
Yeah. So Zach, you were telling the story how you started out in military and army, and then you went to work at the police department, which sounded like you loved, and then they yanked you away, and you're in an Africa in a shipping container with satellite internet capabilities, sort of. They're not the greatest, right? But get an offer to start a trucking business, and you're contemplating that, like, I could make this work. And then that's kind of, I think, where we got cut off in the last segment, which is a really great story. You go from working as a police officer to maybe have a trucking business, but you're in Africa. Like,
yeah.
like,
How do I manage this?
I'm interested in hear what happened next.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I had spoke with my friend, and so she's like, yeah, I can manage. We just have to. How are we going to get the business up and running? I had the funds at that point, and I think by then, I had saved, I don't know, we'll just say $40,000, roughly, something like that. So I start looking at trucks and talking to her, and what kind of trucks, what do we need equipment wise, and so I looked at a small day cab Volvo, and I could pick those up fairly cheap for around $10,000, believe it or not. And now at the
this
time,
must have been a while ago.
Well, it was 2016. Those, and believe it or not, those trucks, you can still pick them up for around 15 to 20 right now. But either way, I purchased one of those, and I was doing what's called power only. It was a power only contract, so no trailer was needed. I got a contract. She had a contact with someone here in Roanoke. We got a contract hauling fertilizer to farms, and she got the driver, and it was up and running. Now I want to back up and just say that starting the business was somewhat difficult, but it was an experience that, like, I would never trade, and it was almost like a challenge because, it was, but at first, I was like, well, how am I going to do any banking? How am I going to? And I didn't know anything. I had never started a business. There was believe it or not, I was on a Navy base in Djibouti. So, and I was right next to the airport in the shipping container, by the way. It's like a slew of shipping containers lined up, and they're stacked up 3 high, and probably 200 of them. And but there on the other side of the base, there was this little shipping container, and I was walking past it one day, and it said Navy Federal Credit Union. And I was like, no way. A bank in the shipping container? Like, so I walk in and like, hey, hello, how can I help you? I was like, is this an actual bank? And she's like, yes. She's like, we don't have like, I guess they don't do deposits or don't work with like
there's an
cash,
ATM in the side of the shipping container.
She was like, well, yeah, we're here, Navy Federal Credit Union is. And so I was like, all right, well, I need to set up an account. I need a business account. And of course, she wanted all the documents. And I was like, well, I don't really have all that yet. So I was like, I guess I need to do my homework a little bit more. So I went to the JAG office. And of course, the JAG office was kind of like, this is like more so for personal matters and for military matters and not for business, but we'll help you out. They were like, what are you trying to do? I was like, I want to start a business. And if you can help me, if you can guide me in how to do that, then I have a bank on base that I can work with too. And then I, can further process along. So long story short, I learned that with creating a business, it only takes, you can do everything in less than 1 hour online yourself. Which is also dangerous, but you can do it. And I did it all through Adobe, like as far as the signatures and all of that.
Right.
But yeah, I got on the SEC website, created my business, got my FEIN, and I decided to name the company. I was like, man, what is in Africa that symbolize? Because I wanted it to be something related to Africa. It's where I'm at starting this business, and fast that has to do with trucking. So I thought, I was like, Rhino Transport. Oh, that's cool, but that's not really fast. But it's tough sounding. I was like, no, I don't know. And I thought of different names, and that lasted for a couple of days. But I decided on Cheetah Transport. I was like, all right, that's perfect. It's fast. I'll have a cheetah on the side of the truck, and that's what I went with. And created my own logo on a website. I mean, this lasted, the creation of it, I probably spent about a week, but because I was coming off mission and I would stay up late and, I'll get 5-6 hours of sleep and so forth, and I was able to work on it. Took me a week or two, and then once I had all that together, then of course, I had to get some things notarized, too, at the JAG office. Then I went to Navy Federal Credit Union and got my business account.
So you did have some advisors a little bit. I mean, they the JAGs are attorneys that were able to advise you on, hey, you could set up an LLC. I don't know how much advice they gave you, but was that helpful at that time when you were just, it sounded like you were green as they come at that point. I never had a business before, like, some people go, they come in and they go, I don't know, is this an LLC or my friend has an S corporation? My friend tells me to do this or that. Like, were you kind of at that stage? Like, just give me some advice. I don't know anything.
I was, and I will say, the JAG office, they didn't really provide much advice for me because, again, I was asking them to do some things outside of the realm of what
it wasn't like a personal civil matter that was personal to you. It was a business matter, but they sound like they were helpful.
They were. Definitely helpful. So
you did the trucking company. Was it successful? Was it lucrative?
Yes.
Made a lot of money.
Overall, I wouldn't be where I am today without it.
Really?
Is trucking extremely difficult? Well, I guess that's a matter of opinion. But for me, as someone that had zero knowledge, like at all, in that industry, it was hard.
Stepping off the cliff, man. Let's jump in head first.
And there's some things I can talk about depending on time of things I would have done differently. But
so you still own the trucking business, or did you get out of that?
I sold.
Okay.
I got back. Actually, while I was in Africa, I ended up purchasing 2 more trucks. So I had 3 by the time I got back. And after that, I went back to work at the sheriff's office and was working patrol and so forth, and ended up seeing a truck parked at a fuel station. And you can run the DOT number on any semi-truck a regular person can, not just like law enforcement. You can get company information and so forth. So the truck was sitting. I was like, why is it sitting? What's the story behind this? It's been sitting there for 2 or 3 weeks with a trailer hooked to it. I was like, that's strange. So I'd already researched on another thing called you can lease a truck, like an individual can lease a semi-truck onto another company, and they can lease the truck out and help the owner make money and so forth. I was listening to podcasts, books, everything I could get my hands on to educate myself.
He preaches that. Brian preaches that. Read. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, you got to educate yourself or you're going to get left behind.
Yes. And if you don't have time to physically read a book, get audiobooks.
Right.
If you're driving around.
Right. Sure. Everybody drives 20 minutes at least, right? You can read 20 minutes a day.
So, yeah, I ended up meeting this gentleman, and he was like, I just don't have the time to mess with it right now. And I was like, well, I will, if you'll lease the truck onto my company, I'll put a driver in it for you, and I'll help you manage it, and I'll give you X amount of profit. He was sold, and within weeks, I had a driver in there, and the truck was making money. And then at that point, he was excited about it and was like, well, I'd like to buy more trucks. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And then from there on, he became my partner. So, operated Cheetah Transport. I was promoted into, at the sheriff's office, I'm promoted to a criminal investigator. So it got to where I was investigating felony level crimes, and you have to make and everybody, if you're working a W-2 job and you have a side hustle, there will be a point where you have to make an ethical choice, especially if you're getting phone calls on a business that you run while you're on the clock, So for me, I kind of felt guilty at some points where I'd be getting business calls while I'm working.
What was your income on the business, more or similar to what you were getting paid on the City of Roanoke?
No, and for clarification, I wasn't there at Roanoke.
Oh.
It was. I probably won't people that know me know where.
That's fine. So, but you were law enforcement getting paid, and your income of the business wasn't generating that yet. So that's why you're like, well, I can't leave, but I'm also
correct. Yes. So,
struggling with I need to pay, and then you got benefits.
Benefits, retirement. This is like my career path here,
right?
The occupation that I've chose, but the more I read, and I was like, especially after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad.
I was going to ask you what your favorite book was.
Robert Kiyosaki, buddy.
Yeah. It's got to be that one. I mean,
it's everybody's.
Everybody loves that.
Because that's where it all began.
It all begins there. Well, you start understanding the difference of money and investing versus saving, and it was great to hear the behind story. A lot of people skim over that kind of little detail. You mentioned getting help, right? Business owners are very prideful. I mean, look, I've been a business owner for over 20 years, so I'm talking about myself here. You can do it yourself. You can research it, but you got to get some help along the way, right? Who's been the mentor? I think I would love to hear that part. If there's been anybody, you said something about a partner, right? Is there maybe a father figure or some other person that's kind of been your go-to person? I still want to hear the end story, like where you are today. You had a trucking business. Sounds like it was successful and profitable. You had to make a decision there with law enforcement. Do I continue to do this full time, because running a business and full-time employment, that's dangerous for a lot of things, right? Relationships. You mentioned you had kids, which we'll get into, but what's I guess the big thing is, who's helped you along the way? Has there been any mentors there? You don't have to mention names or anything, but has there been someone that you can reach out and be like, hey, I've got the situation. What would you do?
Yes. I think that's very important because, yes, you can self-educate, listen to podcasts and books, but being able to pick the brain of someone who's already been there, done that, made mistakes, learn from their mistakes, and try to avoid making those mistakes can help eliminate some risk. And I have had mentors along the way. I guess it's kind of like the cheat code in a way to have someone that's already, especially if you surround yourself with people that are headed in the direction where you want to go. It's only going to make you more successful. And what is the saying? It's like surround yourself with the top 10 people that you want to become, and you end up becoming that, or whatever. Yeah,
you do. You have to surround yourself with people that you want to become.
That's why Brian hangs out with me.
Well, Well, he calls on the weekends. I'm like, I'm busy.
Yeah.
I can't. I'll call you back next week.
Yep. I'm rotating my tires right now, Sharp. I can't get to you right now. Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, good. So no, I think it's really important. And instead of trying to do it yourself, maybe reach out to someone, or if you, it can be someone in a small group that you know, whether that's your church or some type of group. If you are able to start identifying people that are successful or have an entrepreneurial mindset, have had businesses, et cetera, and you can identify them, just start a small conversation with them. And a lot of times those types of people just want to help. They want to help. They grew where they had someone to help them, so they want to do the same thing for others. I know at least I do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's constantly giving out free advice to people that ask me. Friends or family members want to do their own thing, and you want to help people, right?
And by the way, this is what he gets paid for, and he gives out this. Well, I mean, you have to for friends and family.
I do, but I'm saying, I mean, because to give somebody a free advice at a soccer game,
right,
is one thing, right? Some general advice. Oh, cool. You want to start a real estate business, or you want to do some consulting? Yeah, get an LLC, do some, basic general advice. You can't get into the weeds.
Right.
The weeds take hours and hours. I mean, to really go from starting a business to implementing it, or selling a business. Tell me about, so you sold the trucking business. Where are you at today, and what are you doing? And I guess what happened to the law enforcement job? Like
for sure. Yeah. So, so I guess, of course, COVID hit in 2020, and at that point, we had 7 or 8 semi trucks, and at the moment, I just seen it as another challenge that I got to overcome. Looking back, I'm like, wow, we made it through COVID. Like, just all the logistical nightmares that we had to work through in the trucking industry. Now, there was a lot of federal funding and stuff like that, and of course, the rates were, they skyrocketed in trucking. To move freight, people were paying whatever they had to pay to get it to where they needed to go. So
benefited you.
It did, and helped a lot. And however, after we'll call it COVID money dried up, the market, because the trucking industry a lot of times follows the stock market. So there were some correlations there. But late 2022. My partner and I started to think about other options. Hey, we could, at this moment, we could sell these trucks and we could find other opportunities. So I was like, how do you go about that? Like, it's not like you can just find businesses like online for sale, can you? And sure enough, you can. So I started researching that, and I looked at multiple different businesses for sale that were existing already in the Roanoke Valley, and I happened to find the one that I was most interested in, which was AMCO of Roanoke. It was for sale. It had been there for 20-some years, and I was like, I told my partner I'm going to start meeting up with some of the sellers and discussing what kind of options we have here. So I ended up meeting the owner of AMCO of Roanoke at Starbucks. I drove my semi-truck because I was delivering something, drove it, parked it in the parking lot next door. And
way to create an entrance.
She was, I guess when I got in there, she's like, wait a minute, were you driving that semi-truck? I was like, yes, but I have a delivery I got to make and so forth. And she was like, yeah, but you are here to like discuss purchasing the shop? I was like, well, yes, but we're selling the trucking company and so forth. So anyways, I really hit it off with her. The shop had been...
Was that Mary?
It was Mary.
Okay.
Yeah. And her and her father had opened the shop, and of course he had passed away, and it was a family business, and she was just ready to retire. Yeah. And so Yeah, so we
By the way, Amco's transmissions. That's a transmission shop.
Yeah.
I know you know that. I think most people know that, but just,
Yeah.
yeah
just in case.
it's Amco's been around since the late 50s and 1957 to be exact, and it's a franchise model. So then when I was looking at different businesses, that was one of the key things, like a consideration. I was like, all right, well, I can purchase a mom and pop, but
Right.
do they have systems and processes and in
Probably
place?
not.
And
Yeah. Lower risk doing a franchise for sure.
yeah, so I was like, all right, and some of them had a higher EBITDA, which is, let's just say, your net profit at the end. But the risk was lower with Amco.
Right.
So that's what we.
Wait, were you saying the independent shops had a higher EBITDA or lower?
At this point, to be truthful, it wasn't just like shops that I was looking at. I looked at everything.
Oh, you're looking at all kinds of different
I looked at, yes, like recycling centers, restaurants. I had considered a UPS store, a Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, I was really open to anything, and when I was researching, I was looking at like the top franchises on, I think it's entrepreneur.com or something like that. They have a list.
Right.
And they get into the weeds on where the franchises, like what they're good at. They give them a rating.
Right.
And Amco happened to be at the time it was in the top 500, which is, that's I won't say a big deal, but it's a talking point for sure. They were like 141. So I was like, all right, well, this isn't bad. They have a good structure in place and system. So anyway, that's what we decided on. So I went to owner school, and because they have an owner school in Georgia, that's a month. And I signed, or of course, I got my date for owner school. It was in January. The day, so I was cleaning out because I hadn't sold all of the trucks yet. I still had like a couple left at that point. The day that I was supposed to leave for owner school, the night before, I jumped out of my semi truck and broke my foot.
Oh man!
And so I called the schoolhouse and explained the situation. I was like, "Look, I'm going to be on crutches, and can I still come to the school?" And they were like, "Yeah, no problem. As long as you can make it here, it's fine." So showed up to owner school in crutches, on crutches. That was quite that was interesting, but got that done and then completed, came back, and 3 or 4 months later, Mary's brother called. He owned an Amco in Charlottesville, and he was like, "Hey, I see my sister retired. I would like to retire too. Would you like to purchase this location?" So I was kind of like, didn't want to say no, but in my mind, I'm like, I'm just started. Like, I'm not really ready for a second shop. I mean, there's owners that they spend 10 years operating a shop and then they get a second location or what have you. But so my partner and I talked about it, and we were able to settle on a good deal that sufficed for both parties, and moved forward with that and purchased that location there in Charlottesville in late 2023. So
so you mentioned that you had gotten into some real estate. Talk about that for the first time. I don't know if you did buy real estate with the Amico transaction, or maybe it was separate. And then also a separate question is, what was the book that changed? I mean, sometimes people say, yeah, Rich Dad, Poor Dad gives you the big like concept of getting and investing into real estate. But what's the book that kind of showed you how to do it, if there was, or maybe it's a podcast or anything that you could give out, like what your favorite book or podcast that kind of gave you some. We're gonna have to come back in a minute because the segment's about to end, but think about that. Seriously want to know, where was you probably know the time and place you're at when you said, I'm quitting the law enforcement. And I bet it was hard because you sound like you had a love and passion for that. That was your career, right? You're probably planning on 20, 30 years and moving up the ranks, and you had these big goals out. Talk about that for a minute, and then let's jump into some of those questions about the book and what kind of changed into, hey, I got these businesses and I want to do real estate, some on the side. Some of those things that would be helpful for our listeners, because I get these questions all the time, and I want them to hear it from someone else who's doing it. Who, again, we kind of talked off air a little bit. You don't have a PhD in business or an MBA, or you're not a business expert. You educated yourself, right? So, anyways, go into some of that the time about when you decided to quit your W-2 job and go out there, and it's scary land, right? I mean, it's
for sure.
It's I got the guaranteed paycheck from the government to no guaranteed paycheck.
Yep. Yeah. So, like I say, I was kind of working for the sheriff's office and also managing the trucking company, and I guess it was late 2021. I had just had my first child and had took maternity leave. Is it maternity or paternity? Paternity. It's the father. Either one. Either way.
You had a baby.
Yes. And at that point, ironically enough, someone had drove by. This is, of course, post-COVID. Someone had drove by our house and was like, we really want to buy your house. And the realtor friend reached out, hey, these people want to buy your house. I'm like, well, I don't want to sell my house. What am I going to do then?
Right.
And it all lined up to be perfect timing to where I could sell my house, which would then allow me to have a little bit more cushion to be able to rip the Band-Aid off and quit the W-2 job, in which then I could focus on the business. And I thought about it long and hard, and ended up being the best decision to do that, because without doing that, if I wouldn't have done that, it was kind of a domino effect. I was able to, we sold our home, took the cash from that, and that supported us while I grew the trucking business into where it was, with
right.
7-8 trucks. Of course, I had people saying, oh, he sold his house to buy a truck. No, that's not the case at all. I literally just needed that extra cushion, and that's what did it. So, but yeah, no, the day that I had to walk in and tell my supervisor, had to put in that 2-week notice, that was the hardest thing I'd ever done, because I was 7 years in, extremely vested, passionate about what I was doing. And I mean, I was emotional. Like, it was really tough to make the jump. But yeah, I did that, and ended up talking with them, and you can do, there's full-time, part-time, and then auxiliary. So I dropped down to part-time, and accepted a position working in the courthouse a couple days a week.
Sure.
That still,
right,
that was enough. So and then the rest of the week was managing the trucking company, and ended up getting an office there in Rocky Mount, and it was it was right next to a little hair salon. So it was probably a 300 square foot office, and was there for a while. And I guess the owners of the salon at some point, she came to me, and it was 3 of them that in the salon. She was like, hey, look, I know you're doing well and everything. We would like to sell the salon. Would you be interested in purchasing it? And at the time I was like, well, I have been doing some research on real estate, and I would like to get kind of my feet wet with that as well. So I was like, yeah, I'd like to sit down and talk about it. So that is when I formed TBL Investment Group, and I wanted it to be, I say vague, but I didn't know what direction I wanted to go exactly with real estate, but I knew I was more interested in the commercial side of things. So I called it TBL Investment Group, and the TBL is Thin Blue Line. So
Thin Blue Line for officers. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool.
Nice.
Yep.
So what's the book, or I guess if you said Rich Dad Poor Dad, any other book that's your favorite book that somebody could walk away with, you think that really helped you on this journey of, I just had a W-2 job and now I'm sitting here with multiple businesses and real estate. What do you think the best book for someone listening?
Truthfully, for that, I mean, my go-to is always Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But when it comes, you had asked earlier about like real estate specifically. I would have to say the Bigger Pockets podcast. I started listening to that back when I was actually in Africa.
They've been around a long time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So 2017, 2018 forward. And, but I mean, as far as other books, I mean, I've read things, Grant Cardone, he's got, Sell or Be Sold, a lot of other books, and podcasts that just kind of help solidify my mindset.
Yeah.
And that's what was important too.
Yeah, it's what you just said, that your mindset has to shift in order to make these decisions, because if you don't have the mindset shift, your mind will tell you that you can't do it, right? And I think that's kind of where a lot of people get stuck. They're not educated enough. They haven't heard enough stories. And I think Bigger Pockets is good for people, whether you're going to start a business or you're going to start real estate or you're even going to retire, right? And you want to just collect checks. You're educating yourself how people are exiting, right? You talked about these people that wanted to retire from the Amico transition shop. I think her name was Mary here in Roanoke, and her husband had passed. And that's one of the 5 Ds we talk about, right? Death, disability, divorce, disagreement. There's that situation, a triggering event that happens in people's lives, right? And they want to move on. And there's someone else that comes along like you that's a buyer, but you got to listen to their needs and what they want. And they're like, hey, I want this, whether it's price or terms. I want to be out in a year, or maybe I want to be out in 3 weeks. I want to stay on, and I've heard, I want to stay on and work here for the next 30 years. And the new buyer's like, I don't want you working here for 30 years. You're trying to work all those, I think, details out, which is good. And I love that you're educating yourself. People come to me and want to do this or do that. And I'm like, what book or podcast or audiobook are you listening to about this specific industry? You want to get into nursing homes, you just told me, right? You want to start buying nursing homes, or you want to start a group home. How many books, how many mentors, how many training programs have you gone to, or conferences to learn about this? Well, none yet, but a friend of mine told me he's doing pretty good with it. Like, that's great. He's doing well, but that guy probably spent a lot of time and effort before he went and did that. And I think it's important, right, to constantly be educating yourself. I know it's helped me in my journey with running different businesses and owning real estate, because when you go and take the step of buying the first property, right? Like, you go bought that office building with the hair salon in it. Doesn't seem as scary because you've been listening to Bigger Pockets for years, right? You've already heard people do it. You knew there was resources out there to help you. I mean, I've got dozens of books. I can go back. I remember that one saying there's a creative strategy that we can do. And I go back to my creative finance strategy book and look up, you know what? There's a great option for this is the situation where I can use that, right? You've got like an encyclopedia.
And that's actually that you speak of that. Now that you speak of that, that was one of the things that I had to utilize is a creative strategy for structuring the deal. So I immediately thought, okay, well, what about owner financing? And that's what we ended up doing on that deal,
which helps the seller.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, they don't pay as much capital gains tax. You don't have to go and pay the bank $12,000 in closing costs and get drilled with 7,000 questions about your debt to income ratio and the last 17 years of tax returns and blood from your first child, and
exactly.
Give me 100 push-ups and like all the due diligence and I get it. The bank's taking risk, right? But you went to them and said, how about we do a deal together, and everybody wins except the IRS and the banks.
And we closed fast, and not some large, or not a bunch of inspections, and it was simple. It was extremely simple. But I learned that I'd already had that tool per se, or that
Right.
idea in my back
Yep.
pocket from listening to Bigger Pockets and stuff. So,
Oh, it's a great way into real estate. I mean, the guy I was talking to about last night, he said, Brian, I like getting real estate, but I just don't have the funds, you know? And
Who does?
well, he worked for the government for 30 years. And so I said, well, you could use your 401k and turn it into an IRA, and the IRA could be a self-directed IRA, which actually could put 20% down payment and 80% loan to value on your property. And you came up with no actually cash from your own, checking or savings account, but you just bought a property for $1 million. And then they actually might not even look at your debt to income ratio, because they're going to look at the deal. They're going to look at the investment property. Does it cash flow, right? It's called a debt service coverage ratio type of loan, where they're looking at, is it going to pay for the loan? They're not looking at if you make 100,000 or 1 million. So, that's, I told him, and he goes, oh, wow, I never thought about that. He said, and there's also seller financing. I know people, and I've done it myself, seller finance. You don't have to come with any money. You just got to have the knowledge, or the bank or the lender. If they know you don't know what you're doing, the seller's not going to be interested in selling to you. Right. And that's where education comes. We appreciate you coming on this show, Zach, and appreciate your story. And you want to give out some more information about his business?
Yeah, just and self-made success. So if we want to do some research on AMCO transmissions, or where I'm listening and I have a transmission problem, where do I go to look up your number?
you can go to the website, which is
AMCORoanokeVA.com. I know it like
See,
the back of my head.
Our email address is amcoroanoke.com. So,
Oh, okay. So it's
info at-
AMCORoanokeVA.com.
correct.
Right?
To go there, or you can go to our Facebook page. We are always doing giveaways. We like to see what's going on in the community, whether it's concerts, events, things like that, and we give away tickets to those at least every other week on our Facebook page. So.
Well, thank you for your time, man. We really appreciate it.